At exactly 6 in the morning, the alarm clock rang loudly. Pulling Sally out of a sound sleep, the woman sweetly stretched after a couple of minutes, put the kettle on, washed her face, cleaned herself up, and went to wake up her 7-year-old son Oliver for school. She gently rubbed his hair. She gently ruffled his hair and said, "Oliver, son, wake up. It's time to get ready for school. Open your eyes or we'll be late." The baby was crying his eyes and didn't want to get out of bed. "Mommy, just a few more minutes." "Okay, but I won't eat the nasty oatmeal porridge, and I don't want to go to work for you after school. I don't want to go to your place of work after school. It's boring and uninteresting there." Sally persuaded her nekochuchuku not to eat porridge. "I made an omelet and tea and a sandwich like you like, and then I'll go to work, and then I'll take you home." In the kitchen. A businesswoman's day is literally minute by minute. She'd take them to the office, and then it would be a whirlwind of calls, meetings, negotiations, meetings, and so on until the evening. Sally had her own atelier, which she raised by herself. Sally's job was to provide it all and negotiate sales. At first it was difficult and scary. She thought she couldn't cover everything, but in time she got involved and the business went on, even though her beloved child took up almost all of her time. Even for her son, there was not much left. "You'll be a painter, and they won't give you much money for your paintings, just like Picasso. You'll go to the seamstress and learn to be a seamstress. You're good at it. You can't tell the difference." Sally sighed and agreed. She was happy to do it. She was only glad to get away from this hole and not see her father with his empty fish eyes and her mother's disgruntled face, because of poverty-teased zoo shaved, so that to celebrate with angry classmates certainly did not want to, and a beautiful dress she did not have, and to go in someone else's given and re-stitch went with her, arranged her daughter in a hostel, and then went home, leaving a little money and homemade for the first-time sewing school. Graduated also brilliant, but did not stop there, and went further, entered the university on the designer of clothes. Her it beckoned from childhood on a parallel stream of economics studied John there. They met in the canteen cafeteria and often crossed paths. It so happened that the guy studied very poorly and was on the verge of expulsion, and Sally took up to help him and to work at the same time. 6 months later, John successfully passed the session, was so grateful to this snub-nosed funny girl they started dating and went on hand in hand. All his accounting reports and, like the Grey Cardinal, secretly managed his affairs, although the company was registered for 2 people. But since his wife soon gave birth to a baby boy, she rarely came to the office. Labor thought that it was John who managed everything so competently, and his wife was just a backup. At first, the business was fine, but soon John became bored with everything. He gave her a ride in the rain and admired the drenched beauty at the bus stop, whose dress stuck and repeated all the curves of her young body, and she invited him home for a cup of coffee in gratitude. He returned in the morning for the first time in his life, cheating on his wife. Their meetings became more and more frequent. He lied to Sally about the hollow pro loaded on the benches and could not hold him back. He reveled in the stormy romance with Sarah, and did not see that Sally guessed everything, of course. She cried nights from impotence, jealousy, and resentment, tried to talk to her husband frankly. She couldn't bear to live a lie, but he denied everything and made 1,000 excuses. Their family was falling apart in front of her eyes. There was no more tenderness, closeness, and warmth. John became alien and cold. He didn't even have time for his son. And still the woman believed in her heart that it was just a temporary crisis in the family. She still loved him and did not want to destroy the family, at least for the sake of her son, because he needed a father. But when he turned 5, John left them and did it so meanly while Sally took her son to the zoo. He quickly packed his things, leaving only a woman to file for divorce. Sally was horrified. He didn't even say goodbye to her son. He didn't talk to her straight. She could barely explain to the baby why Daddy wouldn't live with them anymore. She didn't want to humiliate herself, but that wasn't all. At the trial, it turned out that John had secretly signed over the company to himself, slipped the necessary documents for signature, and prepared himself. At least he'd left the apartment, thank you in advance. She didn't know what to say to the child. She couldn't tell him that his father was dead. And then the woman suddenly got so angry that she decided to spite him and organize her own business. At university, she studied to get on her feet, helped a former classmate and now a successful businessman. He gave the woman money at a low interest rate to promote herself. To return the money, will her business go well? She started with the simplest and most important. She bought expensive quality machines and materials and hired experienced seamstresses. First basement room. And gradually the business began to spin jackets and coats. They sewed quality products fit well and had an interesting design. Of course, all this took a lot of time. She was literally torn between work and her son. However, it was very important for her to give her son all the love, affection, care, and attention that she had not been given. The foreman knocked in the office, and Sally was startled out of her memories and hurried to the production site. Oleshka was still asleep, and the woman was not yet in the office when the little boy woke up. He rubbed his eyes sleepily and twisted his head. Then he took his math book and notebook out of his backpack and started to do his homework. But on the first example, the boy got bored and he looked out the window enviously looked out the window, so he wanted to go for a walk and run a little bit. And Oliver decided to go outside for a minute while his mom was away. He walked along the street and looked around and suddenly saw a playground on the other side of the road. There was a slide, swings, and tourniquets. The child immediately decided Oliver was already taking off mentally. On the swing he was daydreaming and didn't look at the road. He didn't see a car flying straight at him. He heard the screech of brakes and a strong man's hand. A stranger with a beard and a funny knitted hat began to reprimand him in a bass voice. "Why don't you look around? You're tired of living? Don't worry. What's your name?" The child quietly answered, "My name is Oliver." "Where do you live, Oliver? I'll take you home. You're lost over there in that building. My mother works as a director without asking. I just wanted to go on the swing," and the boy cried like crazy. The stranger took him by the hand and winked. "Don't cry. Things happen in life. Mom will forgive you. Don't be afraid. Come on." Sally took care of her business and went to her room. And when she saw her son gone, she almost went crazy. Where'd he gone? Where'd he gone? She searched 2 floors, all the restrooms, and there was no sign of him. He'd never left without asking. The panicked woman ran out onto the porch, followed by the guard. A vagrant was holding her child's hand. Sally rushed toward him and, without realizing it, ran at the stranger. "Who are you? Who are you? What do you want with my son? Get away from him and I'll call for help. But I'll call for help." "Don't shout, Mommy. This kind uncle saved me. I almost got hit by a car. I didn't see her. He pulled me to the sidewalk. Don't scold, Uncle. It's all my fault. I'm sorry. I won't do it again." Sally hugged her son and held him close. "I was so scared for you. Don't ever do that again. You're the most important thing I have, and I'm so worried about you." Then she looked at the stranger. She was ashamed of her behavior. "I'm so sorry I ran into you. Thank you so much for saving my son. I didn't stay long. I went away for a while. I came back and he was gone. Tell me how I can thank you. Maybe you need some money. Here. Take it." And she started to put some big bills in his hand. He yelled at her and sharply said, "Take the money away. I don't need anything, except to help you with a job. There's no place for me. I want to start a new life with a clean slate, you know. I'm tired of wandering around like this." Sally even felt sorry for him. She stepped aside and turned to the guard. "Listen, Andrew, I thought you retired your replacement. Maybe you could take this man." The man frowned and muttered, "It's up to you. Of course you're the mistress. It's up to you. But I'm against it. He's a vagrant. He'll start stealing." I don't know how to trust him, but the woman was adamant and replied softly, "You're right. Of course we're taking a risk. But I insist. Let him work for 3 months, like a trial period. And then we'll see. Man, what's your name? You have documents as a security guard. You'll come to us." Mike was very happy. "I'm Mike. I have a passport. So when you come to work with Menschikova, come tomorrow at 8 o'clock. He will tell you the work schedule and explain everything." From that day, Mike started working in the atelier as a security guard. He was polite and neat. From the first paycheck he got dressed, cleaned himself up, and even rented a room on the outskirts of the city. Was insanely grateful to Sally that she took a risk and trusted him, gave him a chance to start another new life like everyone else. He often talked to Oliver. The boy trusted him, reached out to him, told him all his childhood joys, sorrows, and even his tears. Sally was happy with the new employee, but Andrew was tearing up. He couldn't stand this tramp because he wanted to hire his buddy and decided to get him out at any cost on one of the working days when Mike was on shift. There was a scandal just at the changeover, he voiced Sally Ivanovna. I told you he's still with him. She didn't believe it could happen. She took the documents in her hands, looked through them, and immediately realized Andrew VRT Mike couldn't have access to such papers. So he was just set up. Mike clenched his fists and turned white as chalk, and then quietly but very firmly said, I didn't steal anything. Honestly. If you don't believe me, I'll leave right now, or next time he'll plant drugs on me and that'll be it. I believe you, Mike, and I'll take care of it, I promise. You go on vacation for a week, I'll be fine. He hated the upstart more and went into a rage. Sally's son was at her house. He came up to his mom and whispered to her, Mom, it wasn't Mike's fault. Don't kick him out. I saw that mean uncle come into your office and go through your desk and think I was remembering you, son. You're like a Sherlock Holmes detective, you see. You solve a case like this. He was glad he had helped Grandpa Mike. Sally watched the tape and saw that her son was telling the truth and Andrew had really come to see her. The woman was furious and called the security guard to the carpet. She showed him the video and asked Andrew, You've been working here for a long time. What's going on? Why did you try to slander the man? I just want to understand. He was very grateful to Sally because she believed him for the second time and took his side. He thanked her profusely. Thank you very much, Sally Ivanovna, for not kicking me out. I really didn't steal anything. I just started living like a human being. I'll always help you. The woman nodded and couldn't stand it. She asked about personal matters. Sorry for the indelicate question. How did you end up on the street? Why did you end up on the streets? Why did you end up on the streets? Why did you end up on the streets? Why did you end up in Skidolinskaya and stayed on contract service in the hot spots? I came back. I fell in love with a girl. I got married. I got a job in security. We rented an apartment. Well, and then I had the misfortune to meet a woman who was a tramp. She didn't have enough money. She shook me like a stick in restaurants. And where did I get such money? And then she didn't give me horns at all and ran away with her lover. Then I broke down and I lost my job. I also lost my job when I grew up. I had a fight with my boss and I started to wander around. I wanted to live again. So I'm trying to become a human being. So far I seem to be getting the hang of it. I want to have a family of children. It's such a blessing. Sally listened to me earnestly and didn't stop, then encouraged the new employee. You know our destinies are remarkably similar to yours. I come from a dysfunctional family too. I don't want to remember the hell of my childhood. And my husband also left me for his mistress. My son still misses him. But he doesn't rush to see him once every 3 months for an hour to take him for a walk. One day in the middle of the day, Sally got a call from an important gentleman, a key investor and partner. She'd been wanting to meet him for a long time. Hello, Sally. Listen, you and I have been invited to the same wedding at the Bolero restaurant on Saturday at 5 p.m. There will be a lot of famous people there. The best place for us to meet is hard to think of. You'll go. I'd like to discuss the terms of the deal. I thought your previous offer was interesting. The woman was surprised and frankly confessed. I'd love to meet you, Zach. Yeah, but I haven't heard a word from you. He told me he grew up in a dysfunctional family. His mother was an alcoholic and he didn't like to talk about it. He's not from around here either. Zach continued. You won't believe this, but Mike is my own son. Son was terminally ill. A year later, despite the efforts of doctors and investments from surrogacy, he finally broke down and started drinking. So did you. Mike's childhood was unhappy. I know I have one son and he is suffering. I would have taken him and raised him in love and care. Now that I found him, he's dying. I pray day and night that he survives. And thank you, Sally. Thank you so much for supporting him. I owe you a debt of gratitude. Sally couldn't believe what she was hearing. She blinked confusedly and confessed. You know, I'm really glad it was your son, but I berate myself every day. And I can't forgive myself for talking him into this scam. Because of me, he might die. I'll be responsible for his death. I want to help him so much, but I don't know how doctors don't give him a chance at all. They say wait. But why wait? I'll get the best specialist to give me money for my son. I'm not sorry, and I'll get him back on his feet. I assure you I've got a purpose in life now. If he knew his father was waiting for him, I think he'd come to his senses faster. I think he'd come to his senses faster. Sally grasped the man's words like a straw, and after talking to him, she rushed to the hospital. She went into the room. Mike was still lying there with his eyes closed. The woman took his hand and squeezed it tightly. We're cold and lifeless, she began to say to him. Mike, listen. You have to wake up. You have to wake up. Your father Zach saw you at that unfortunate wedding and realized that you were his son. Do you hear me? Your father is waiting for you. He's praying for your health and waiting for your recovery. He loves you, and I'm waiting for you as an employee and as a friend and as the dearest and most beloved person. Only when you had a disaster did I realize how precious you are to me, how important and necessary you are, Mike. Get well soon. We all want it very much. You're not alone on Sally anymore, you know. It's hard to believe, but the finger on the hand that Sally was holding twitched and she felt it clearly. And then her eyelids fluttered and the sensors started beeping and Sally rushed to call the paramedics. Doctors called it a miracle, Mike's return to this world, because the chances of a safe. But Zach made a lot of efforts. Mike had the best medical luminaries at his side and the care was of the Lux class. All together gave a good result, and little by little the man began to come to his senses. Not at once he recognized everyone. Sally and Zach were there for him all the time, supporting Mike morally and giving him strength, telling him all the time that he would get better. Little Oleshka drew him beautiful pictures and was also waiting for Uncle Mike to get well. He was used to talking to him, spending time with him, sharing time. When Mike was almost ready to be discharged, he suddenly confessed, Sally, you know, I was kind of between that light and this light. About loving me, I suddenly wanted to wake up so desperately I even felt offended. Well, how can I be expected there? And here I am? I want to ask you something. You said that just to be supportive. Yes, I just like you very much. I've never met a woman like you before, but I told myself not to dream. I thought I was just a vagabond. And who are you? A business lady, and decided that there could be nothing in common between us. Now it's very important for you to answer me honestly. Sally decided everything for herself a long time ago. To make you proud of me, my father also wept and answered. Everything is ahead of us, son. Now we won't get lost anymore. I'm waiting for you in my company. I'll bring you up to speed. I should have retired a long time ago. And why did you come without your things? I thought you would live with us now, and we are so bored in the big house with my mother. Mike answered honestly. Daddy, Sally and I fell in love, and I'm living with her now. I finally met my true happiness. My sweetheart, and I've loved Oliver for a long time. I want to be her support, the most faithful and the best husband. I hope you will understand and support me. And her ex-husband, I know him too. She's poor, but Sally's a fighter. She started her own business from scratch. She's smart, but I don't think it's easy for her. Business isn't a woman's business. Try to make sure she gets some rest and feels like a woman. You know what I mean. That's my fatherly advice. Mike started living with Sally and Oliver, and from the first minute he felt like he belonged in the apartment. The baby was very happy and desperately lacked his father's attention and advice. So he followed Mike around like a tail and didn't get annoyed. On the contrary, he patiently told him everything and taught him manly things. Sally's relations were also good. Mike remembered his father's instruction and tried to surround his beloved with attention and care. He gave her relaxing massages, listened to all her sorrows and problems and tried to solve them, and was just there for the woman to melt and melee, because her ex-husband John was the complete opposite of this. She did everything for him to please him. That's why she enjoyed such a sincere love of Mike, and did not regret a second now that John left her. Then otherwise she would have cried into her pillow and suffered from cheating husband John after the scandal at his own wedding got a, I don't understand. And then that poor man killed himself. I'll remember that day for a long time. Not the kind of wedding I'd dreamed of. A nice start to married life. John himself realized that things didn't go as planned. He got drunk and humiliated Mike in public for nothing. After all, what's the big deal? And in the end he disgraced himself. The tramp turned out to be the son of an important businessman, and now he's on the horse to learn from his experience. In bed he was good Golden Mountains, that businessman Kish Kam at the soil no profit Sarah. After all, Matala about a nourished and abyssal life, about salons and vacations abroad, but had to only and comfort the loser husband and listen to his promise that soon everything will get better. Such a marriage did not please the young, and Sly was not. It was the lover who persuaded the present wife to steal the necessary documents in John's safe, and with the help of them he easily took away the company of the legal owner, was crushed, humiliated, and trampled on the horns, and flew off with a new husband to the Maldives, and he was left with nothing. The man was forced to admit the bitter truth that it was Sally who had really run his business, and without her, Tiny's company had gone under. John remembered again about his ex-wife. He regretted 100 times that he had left her then, and exchanged her for the empty Sarah, and the man was determined to get his wife back by any means necessary. It was his only chance to get back on his feet. At first he began to beat the doorsteps of her atelier, cut off the phone, and tried to give flowers, but Sally only got angry and did not want to reconcile with him. She explained to John 100 times, "Do not call, and do not come here anymore. It's too late for you to think about love and loyalty. You should have thought about your family earlier. I love someone else, and there's no place in my heart for you anymore. Please go away." John was angry and mad. How could he be rejected again? He didn't even expect this. He thought that if he waved a finger at her, Sally would come back to him. At first, Oleshka was happy that his father finally remembered about him and agreed to come to see him on his day off. The boy excitedly told how he and Grandpa Mike had flown a kite, how they had made a funny donkey for school, and how he had taught him how to ride a bicycle. But for John, it was like a knife to his heart. "You don't know that Grandpa Mike and I already talked about it, and he explained that you can drive when you have a license. But little kids can't drive, it's dangerous, you can get into an accident. You're swearing for nothing. You know how cool he is. Look how I know how to do it now," and the boy showed him some karate moves. He was waiting for his dad to praise him, but he frowned even more. "Let's kick this Uncle Mike out together, and I'll come back to you and Mom. Why do we need a stranger's uncle when we have a dad?" And suddenly started asking to go home. "No, Daddy, I don't want to do that. I'm fine with Uncle Mike and Mommy. She's laughing like she used to, and she doesn't cry anymore. I love you. You're my daddy. I'm going home. If you're not interested in listening, I thought you'd be happy for me." John realized that he'd overreacted, that he couldn't discuss adult topics with a child so bluntly. He tried to smooth things over, but the kid had to be nice. He stayed with him for half an hour and called his mother, and John drove him home. The boy went into the apartment and was immediately greeted by his mother and called him into the kitchen. They were so engrossed that they didn't even notice how the time flew by. They were joking and chatting, and Sally was watching and thinking, how strange it was to be with your son like this when he was not at home, or working, or tired, or young. Mike had taught him so many things in a short time, including how to make slingshots, how to make figures out of wood, how to hammer nails together, and he never got annoyed or yelled at the child. "It's easy, and my son is happy because he missed it so much. He's so busy sniffing and feeling like a little man. And today he didn't go to pick up his son. He asked to go home an hour later, and came home so sad and depressed about what happened there. How can it be that a strange man loves and cares more than a father, but his own father can't find a common language with his son? That I met Mike, that he came into my life at all. Only now I realized what a real family is, what it is to be loved. It turns out that if a man loves you sincerely, he'll go to pieces, but he'll make his woman happy." John went completely off the rails after the failed meeting with his son. If Mike hadn't been on Sally, Sally would have come back to him and everything would have been the same as before. The more he got drunk, the more he wished his abuser dead, so he decided not to hesitate, got behind the wheel and drove to Sally's house. Why should he live like that? He started pounding on the door like a madman. Sally came out and saw John drunk in the DSC and sighed heavily. "Well, what do you want? We got divorced a long time ago. Don't come here. Please go away. Don't talk." Nerves. But John wouldn't give up. He shouted in his own voice at the whole entrance. Behind him, a terrified Oliver looked out and babbled, "Daddy, you're drunk." "I'm afraid to leave," Mike said firmly to Sally. "Go to Oliver's apartment and calm him down. I'll be right back." But the woman could feel it in her heart. You could see it in his eyes. They were crazy. She couldn't stand it, and just in case she called the police. Sally was eager to help her lover, but she couldn't leave her son either. He was scared and crying. So Sally asked a neighbor to watch her son, and she ran out into the yard. Drunk John was waving a knife and attacking Mike. "I'm not giving you, Sally. Get out of our lives. I'm not going to kill you now." Mike wasn't scared. He'd grown up in a dysfunctional family and spent his days hanging out with street kids, so he knew how to fight. He'd seen worse in the war, too. He twisted John's arms and he howled from the pain in his wrists. "Mike, you can't force a man to fall in love or out of love. Do you understand that or not, you dumbhead? Sally betrayed her. Why do you want her back? Tell me. She won't be happy with you. You're selfish. You don't need a son. You don't need a son for 100 years. You don't want to take care of a child. You need patience and time. You're used to having everything for yourself. Have you ever tried not only to take, but also to give? Anyway, if you show up here again or even call me once, I'll put you in jail and I'll get your father involved." And he's got connections. John was in pain and despair because Mike was telling the bitter truth and there was nothing to say. "Don't be afraid. I love you so much. Come on, let's go. The baby's scared to death." Sally came to him, kissing him and wailing how good it is to have you around. Mike took the baby and held him close to him. Looking into his eyes, he said firmly, "You're more than a son to me, Oliver. You're the dearest thing to me. Never be afraid and know that I will always stand up for you. Let's order a pizza and the three of us watch a good movie. Let's see what you want." The boy immediately wiped away his tears and turned on his favorite movie, and they sat comfortably on the bed and watched it with pleasure.